I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. I know a lot of coverage this week has been on Donald Trump's criminality, his traitorous behavior, his despicable, disgusting, and dangerous speeches, and special counsel Jack Smith and federal judge Tanya Chutkan holding Donald Trump accountable. But let's not also forget some big pro-democracy wins. I want to talk about a United States Supreme Court ruling, surprising 5-4 ruling that overturned a MAGA Republican judge who would have allowed the proliferation of what's called ghost gun kits. And actually, the United States Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision with right-wing justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining the other pro-democracy judges appointed by Democratic presidents Obama and Biden, a big 5-4 decision that stopped a nationwide injunction by a MAGA Republican judge that would have allowed these ghost gun kits to proliferate. But let's not also forget the other big win that I want to talk about too. Then we'll get into this fairly surprising court ruling, the big win of Issue 1 in Ohio. We did a whole video on this. You can go search our breaking news coverage when Issue 1 was rejected by the Ohio voters. Issue 1 was put in place by MAGA Republicans in Ohio who wanted to change the Constitution. So if you wanted to do an amendment to the Constitution, it would have required a super majority, 60% plus vote in order to change the Constitution, because the MAGA Republicans said, in November, people of the state are going to try to pass a constitutional amendment to give women the right to control their bodies. MAGA Republicans like, how do we stop this? Let's just increase the voting requirement to try to block a majority vote to block the states' rights, because there's MAGA Republicans, when they talk about states' rights, they just say that, to gaslight people, and they're really full of crap when it comes down to it. They want to use government to control women's bodies and to control the lives of people. That's just what their conduct has shown. All right, back to this big United States Supreme Court ruling in the case of Garland, Attorney General Garland et al. Versus Jennifer Vanderstock et al. Back in earlier in 2023, a MAGA Republican judge, Reed O'Connor, from Texas, issued a nationwide injunction blocking a rule issued in 2022 by the ATF that classified ghost gun kits, which can be assembled into firearms, I think in as little as 20 minutes, as firearms or firearm frames or receivers within the meaning of the Federal Gun Control Act. And by classifying gun kits as firearms, the ATF rule required that such kits have serial numbers, required manufacturers of such kits to be licensed, and required commercial sellers to conduct background checks for purchasers. And the MAGA Republican judge, Reed O'Connor, determined that this was unconstitutional, that the ATF rule exceeded the agency's authority, and ruled that ghost gun kits were not firearms or firearm receivers. DOJ, under Merrick Garland, appealed to the Fifth Circuit. O'Connor's injunction was administratively stayed, and then the United States Supreme Court further administratively stayed O'Connor's injunction, effectively blocking it from going into place, meaning that the ATF rule and regulation remains in place. We'll pull up that order in just a second, but can we reflect just for a moment about how radical and extreme these orders are coming from these MAGA Republican judge? All the ATF was doing is saying, look, if you have these ghost gun kits where you can assemble these things into firearms and then have no trace of it and try to get around some pretty basic rules for responsible gun ownership, maybe we should have serial numbers. Maybe we should, I don't know, the people who manufacture these things, maybe they should have licenses, and maybe we should do background checks. Doesn't seem like that is in any way outrageous. That seems like just common sense stuff. And you've got MAGA Republicans like, nah, people should be carrying around weapons of war wherever they want to and assembling ghost gun kits whenever. What in the world is going on there, folks? What in the world is going on? Here is the order that was handed down. The application for stay presented to Justice Alito and by him referred to the court is granted. The June 30th, 2023 order and July 5th, 2023 judgment of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas, that's Judge Reed O'Connor, insofar as they vacate the final rule of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, the ATF, are stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari, if such a writ is timely sought. Such certiorari be denied. Should certiorari be denied, this stay shall terminate automatically. In the event certiorari is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment of this court. Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, and Justice Gorsuch, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Justice Kavanaugh would deny the application. And so you had a 5-4 decision here as well, with the 3 Democratic appointees joined by Justice Roberts, a George W. Bush appointee, and Amy Coney Barrett, a Trump appointee, the 5-4 decision. And so what this ruling is, when you hear all of these terms, certiorari, and what are they really talking about here? Well, on an emergency basis, the Department of Justice petitioned the Supreme Court saying stay or stop the district court's rule that would terminate the final rule by the ATF. And the ATF rule was the regulations that I talked about with respect to ghost gun kits. And here, what the Supreme Court is saying is, while this case works its way through the Court of Appeals, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is the Court of Appeal that oversees and supervises the district court in Texas and the district courts in Texas. While that takes place, the rule remains in effect by the ATF. And then ultimately, the rule will remain in effect until we grant certiorari, which means a full oral argument before the United States Supreme Court on the constitutionality of the issue. But for now, we're going to preserve the status quo. Status quo is the rule by the ATF. You may be wondering too, well, Justice Alito says something about Justice Alito referring it to the full court. What does that mean? We've talked about that a lot here on the MeidasTouch Network. What's become an informal procedure, essentially in every one of these high-profile cases, though, is that where there is a substantial kind of question or a major ruling, the Supreme Court justice who supervises a specific circuit court, so Justice Alito supervises the 3rd and the 5th Circuit Court of Appeal, the same way Justice Clarence Thomas supervised the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal, and Justice, trying to think about Kavanaugh, I think, is the 8th Circuit Court of Appeal. So different justices oversee different circuit courts of appeal. They will then refer these issues to the full Supreme Court to decide if they're going to grant this emergency administrative ruling. And here, that's exactly what happened. Alito referred it to the court. And in a fairly surprising 5-4 ruling, right, because you had Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett join the others, this rule or this order by the MAGA Republican judge, who, by the way, was appointed by George W. Bush, has been stayed or stopped. I know that's not getting a lot of attention in lots of other places, but here on the MeidasTouch Network, it's critical. We talk about all of these rulings. And I also wanted you to hear, okay, wait a minute. So the MAGA Republicans want there to be unlicensed ghost gun kits? That's what they want? I mean, why in the world would they want that? I mean, how dangerous is that? That's not... we have to have real, just honest, basic conversations and just what? What are we talking about? It's not legal, but it's huh? I'll give you the legal breakdown, but then sometimes I'm that's outrageous. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out as well at MeidasTouch.com, our new homepage for all things MeidasTouch. Have a great day.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.